Lord Stern of Brentford.
I beg leave to ask the question standing in my name on the order paper.
My Lords, Her Majesty's Government is committed to the open, merit-based and transparent process for selecting the next World Bank President agreed by the World Bank Board, including the agreed criteria against which candidates should be assessed.
I thank the Noble Lord, the Minister, for his reply. The perpetuation of the de facto monopoly by the USA and Europe of the positions at the head of the IMF and the World Bank undermines confidence in those institutions and in internationalism, and is surely unacceptable in a world that's changed radically since the founding of those institutions 7 decades ago. First, will the Minister now, clearly and strongly, on behalf of Her Majesty's Government, encourage good candidates from across the world to come forward for nomination, recognising that the past monopoly and the current signalling from Europe in relation to this appointment is a real deterrent? Second, will he recognise that Sustainable Development Goals agreed at the UN in September 2015 and the UN Paris Climate Agreement of December 2015 are at the core of the World Bank agenda, and therefore recognise that the absence of commitment to this agenda is a serious weakness in the candidate nominated by the US, and that weakness is compounded by his lack of experience in managing a financial institution. Third, when the tenure... this is important. Third, when the tenure of Christine Lagarde, who has done an outstanding job as head of the IMF, comes to an end, will he state clearly and strongly that Her Majesty's Government will not support the perpetuation of Europe's monopoly of this position and will actively seek good candidates from across Europe and the USA?
In answer to number one, yes, there should be an open process and there should be suitable candidates who actually come forward. When he was at the World Bank, of course, it was an anointing of the US candidates. Since 2011, there has been a process, and we welcome that process. Second, we are absolutely unequivocal in our commitment and standing by the commitments to climate change, which are an integral part of the role of the World Bank and have been shaped in great part by the work of the Noble Lord, for which we are all grateful.
Irrespective of the outcome of this open and transparent process that the Noble Lord, the Minister, is talking up so much, I've no doubt that the outcome will be Malpass and the US nominee getting it. But the point I would ask is, what is the British government doing to ensure that we do have the fullest representation of the World Bank and that we have people there to influence its decisions more than just simply the head of the bank?
Our key representative there, serving on the Executive Board, is Richard Montgomery, our Executive Director. I'm in regular contact with him, and he makes a great contribution in this area. Of course, the process is still underway. The process for applications is still open until the 14th of March, so it is possible that other candidates may come forward, and we will evaluate them as we've done before.
Her Majesty's Government do if the United States continues to nominate a candidate whom, according to many people, including some, I suspect, within the British Government, do not think meets the criteria for the post.
That's the process which is actually underway at the moment. The only formal candidate who is currently being nominated under Secretary Malpass is actually in London today, is meeting with the UK Governor on the World Bank, who is the Secretary of State for International Development. She is making it very clear the importance that we attach to the commitments of the World Bank, particularly in relation to climate change.
Would my noble friend the Minister agree with me that the announcement just recently that Norway's sovereign wealth fund, currently valued at about $1 trillion, is going to increase its stake in Britain shortly from its 8.5%, which is significant in its own right, is a very strong vote of confidence in the UK's economy post-Brexit?
I think absolutely, and I'm grateful to my noble friend for drawing that to the attention of the House. I'm sure all will be welcome, not only of that vote of confidence in Britain, but also the vote of confidence came through Forbes magazine assessment of the UK being the top place to invest, to do business in the world, and to the UK continuing to be the #1 location for foreign direct investment in the European Union.
Would the Minister agree that if the government is committed, as it repeatedly says, to a proactive foreign policy following Brexit, in which we are playing a full part in building a constructive, peaceful world based on human rights and the rule of law, how can it be acceptable that whatever the Minister may in good faith say, the perception worldwide is that certain traditional powers see these key posts as a carve-up for them, and that the world is not given an opportunity to find the strongest possible candidate committed to the UN objectives at such a crucial time.
When these institutions were set up, the Bretton Woods institutions in 44 and 45, they were set up on a basis of shareholdings. The United States has a shareholding of 16%. We have a shareholding of some 3.8%. It's natural that the largest representative of the shareholder, representing the money that they actually put on the table to get the bank off the ground, should actually consider it a good thing to put their candidate forward.
The World Bank is to be the champion of the world's poor and to leave no one behind. Isn't it important that the President of the World Bank commands the confidence of the world's poor?
We attach great importance to the legitimacy of an open, merit-based process, which is now in place for making that appointment.
In assessing which candidate will succeed, would the Minister take account of the policies that that candidate advocates? Because the World Bank has had a reputation, along with the IMF, in recent decades for pursuing a very destructive neoliberal policy, which has failed recently in Georgia, as it has done elsewhere, with privatisation, marketisation, small government, cuts in public spending become a religion instead of a sensible policy to allow those countries to grow and succeed.
I have to say that I don't accept that description of the work of the World Bank. Actually, the work of the World Bank around the world, which is doing an incredible amount for the world's poor, perhaps investing in infrastructure, investing in food, whether it's with the Rohingya population, it's doing a huge amount. It does have that absolute commitment to provide, to eradicate extreme poverty around the world, and that's the reason why we support it.
Once the nominations process is closed, could my noble friend let the House know when he expects the short list of candidates to be published?
Well, the nomination process closes on March the 14th. There will then be the candidates will be assessed by the Executive Board of Directors, and a decision will be made ahead of the spring meetings in Washington between the 12th and 14th of April.
The outcome of the shortlist is that the only remaining candidate is someone who appears to deny climate change and to adopt policies which would mean that the good work that the World Bank has done in sustainable development get reversed. Would the government be prepared to veto that appointment in those circumstances?
We've made it abundantly clear there's a very major commitment which the World Bank have undertaken, that between 2021 and 25 there will be a significant increase, some $200 billion devoted to climate change projects. That is fundamental to the work of the World Bank. We've made it very clear that we expect that work, which has already been agreed, that will be continued under whoever is the President.
Earl of Glasgow.
Leave to ask the question in my name on the order paper.
My Lords, commercial theatres in London are responsible for setting their own ticketing pricing structures. Theatres supported by the Arts Council also operate independently of government and have autonomy in setting their prices. However, many theatres in London operate schemes to encourage more people to attend performances through free or discounted tickets, and audience numbers have continued to grow.
Well, my Lords, as the government is almost certainly aware, that the West End Theatre is thriving at the moment, but the price of a decent seat in the stalls, for example, has nearly doubled in the last 3 years. But the government may not be aware that the main beneficiaries of these higher prices are not so much the producers of the plays or musicals, but the theatre owners, but those who control access to the theatre. That means the theatre owners, the ticket sellers, and the discredited secondary markets, secondary ticket market. The London theatre is already becoming too expensive for many regular theatre goers, and I would like I hope that the government will take this very seriously because, in fact, London, as we all know, one of the many reasons that people come to London is because of the theatre, and it's gradually going to become too expensive for anybody to be able to come to any of these major plays.
Well, my lords, the noble Earl has highlighted an issue at the very top of the range, and some of those ticket prices have gone up. I think the average top ticket price is now over £100. But there are many examples of theatres who make a big effort to try and give cheap prices. The Donware Warehouse, for example, offers free tickets to under 25s each month via ballot. That's just one. Royal Court Theatre has discounted nights. There are many examples of where you can get seats in the theatre for much less than the top prices.
My lords, can I please ask my noble friend to bear in mind that some of us wonder what this is to do with the government, but in saying so, surely he should be promoting, if people do not go to the theatre in London, shouldn't he be promoting the wonderful provincial opportunities that we have in this country, whether they be in Manchester, in Leeds, in York, or Newcastle, and indeed, in view of the question from the noble Earl, in Glasgow as well?
My lords, I completely agree with my noble friend, and that's why the Arts Council spends so much money, an increasing proportion, in fact, outside London. We agree with him. We're trying to promote the arts in general outside London, and the Arts Council is taking very proactive steps in doing that.
My lords...
I can talk.
Labour, come on, this side.
To the study by the National Campaign for the Arts, which shows that ticket prices in all areas of the arts are rising well above inflation because of the reliance on earning money from the public through ticket prices, with the result that the demographic is narrowed, attendance falls overall, and regional inequalities are exacerbated. Will the government now seriously consider increasing public funding to address these concerns?
Well, the government spends about just under £500 million a year on the arts, and also £860 million of tax relief on the creative industries. So I think the government is doing a fairly large amount already. My figures are slightly different. UK Theatre advised that in real terms, taking inflation into account therefore, the overall average price paid for a ticket has risen by 2% since 2013.
My lords, I should remind the House of my interest as in the register. I wonder if the noble lord would agree with me, I think he would because he's virtually said it, that it's very misleading to look just at headline ticket prices. It is true that London theatres are expensive if you wanted the best seats in the stalls on a Saturday night, but it is possible to go to the theatre in London for quite modest sums. And may I also ask him to confirm that putting on live performance of any kind, particularly at scale, is extremely expensive, very difficult to achieve, requires a great variety of skills and talents, and the more we support it, the more likely we are to find homes for all our young people who might be looking to those industries for jobs in the future.
I completely agree with the noble Baroness, and we, as I said, the Arts Council specifically is looking at trying to increase diversity not only of audiences but also who people who work in the industry. And just as an example, very soon, imminently in fact, we'll be announcing the Youth Performance Partnerships, where we will there'll be a scheme to have performance and drama in 5 regional hubs, and it will reach up to 10,000 young people over the next 3 academic years.
My Lords, I declare my interest as co-chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on ticket abuse, and given the lead that this House has taken in delivering effective consumer protection legislation against unscrupulous ticket touts, would my noble friend the Minister do everything possible to promote face value exchanges for ticketing to address the continuing blatant disregard of the law by companies such as Viagogo?
I absolutely agree with my noble friend, and I believe that enforcement action has been taken via Viagogo, and if they, and I believe it's not 100% certain that they have complied with the court order, in which case they will be taken back to court, because we do take it seriously, and we've taken measures, as my noble friend knows, to crack down on the worst abuses in secondary ticking, such as bots.
Lord Kirkhope's question. So many of these smash hits playing on the London stage, and the talent both front and back of house come through the regional and subsidised sector. However, they are struggling, partly because of local government funding cuts. Can the noble Lord the Minister assure the House that funding to this sector through the Arts Council and the theatre tax relief will be protected in the upcoming spending review? And I declare an interest as a trustee of the Lowry.
Well, there are 186 national portfolio theatres in the country, the vast majority of which are not in London. As far as the spending review is concerned, we will advocate as hard as we can for the arts.
Baroness Cox.
My Lords, I beg leave to ask a question standing in my name on the order paper.
My Lords, we recognise that the noble lady Baroness Cox has brought a number of proposals for reform to the House, and we are aware of Resolution 2253 from the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. We remain committed to exploring the legal and practical challenges of limited reform relating to the law on marriage and religious weddings, as outlined in the Government's recently published Integrated Communities Action Plan.
My Lords, in thanking the noble Lord the Minister for his reply and for his reference to the fact that I have introduced private members' bills for 8 consecutive years in an attempt to highlight the suffering of many Muslim women from gender discrimination in the application of sharia law, many of whom have come to me desperate, destitute, even suicidal, with no rights following the asymmetrical divorce inflicted by their husbands. Therefore, while welcoming Her Majesty's Government commitment to explore the legal and practical challenges relating to marriage reform, may I ask the noble Lord the Minister for an assurance this legislation will be introduced as a matter of great urgency, as so many women are now suffering in this country in ways which will make the suffragettes turn in their graves.
My Lords, we share the noble lady's concern that some may feel compelled to accept decisions made informally, such as those made by religious councils. But marriage is a complex area of law, and the issues will require careful consideration, and we intend to explore these, as I indicated. Where sharia councils exist, for example, they must abide by the law, and where there's a conflict with national law and the court is asked to adjudicate, national law will always prevail.
My Lords, almost 2/3 of Muslim women married in the UK are not legally married, and as the Prime Minister has acknowledged, may be after divorce subject to penury. So what will the government do? It is not discriminatory, because all that is suggested in the independent review is that Sharia courts have also a civil component, or at least there's a parallel civil ceremony, which puts Muslim women on the same basis as Jewish women and Christian women. A year has passed since the independent review. Why won't the government protect these very vulnerable Muslim women?
Well, Lords, we are concerned that these people should be protected. Their decision to go through what is sometimes termed a nikah ceremony is widespread, and unfortunately it does not give rise to a lawful marriage in England and Wales. But as from April, we are taking forward detailed work in order to determine what is the best course of action to address such issues.
My Lords, recent High Court decisions show that this is an issue that affects religious ceremonies generally, but such ceremonies are marriages under UK criminal law if they are forced marriages. However, a victim of a forced religious marriage can then be left destitute, as there are no remedies that follow to get access to the matrimonial property. Parliament left, unfortunately, that gap. So can my noble friend the Minister please outline when this injustice will be remedied, as it is certainly a barrier to victims of forced marriage coming forward if they face destitution, as they can't get hold of their rightful matrimonial property?
My Lord,
feel I must make clear that the offence of forced marriage does not give legal recognition to marriages, but is intended to protect victims from this abhorrent practice, regardless of the validity or otherwise of the marriage. And access to financial orders available on divorce depends on whether or not there has been a legally void or dissolved marriage, and it is governed by an entirely separate legal regime.
It is not just some romantic notion of happy ever after. After 25 years of marriage myself, I've learned it's much more than that. It gives protections and it gives rights which should be available to all couples, regardless of whether they are religious or not. But these Muslim women who believe that they're legally wed may only find out that they don't have the protections of the law until far too late. And that's why the requirement for a civil ceremony, as well as recommended by the Home Office's own independent review last year, is so important. So isn't it time, high time now, for a fundamental review of the 1949 Marriage Act to recognise all forms of marriage in the 21st century?
The general proposition that we should recognise all forms of marriage raises issues in itself. And our marriage law actually goes back to Lord Hardwicke's Act of 1753 rather than just to 1949. It is a complex area. It is an area that we are going to consider from the spring onwards, and it is an area where we will have to move with care. But we cannot simply accept all informal types of marriage and recognise them. We do have a basic marriage law in this country based upon the place in which it's celebrated and the fact that that place is open to the public and that it should be witnessed. And we cannot move away from that. Indeed, if we do so, we create other issues, other problems for ourselves.
My Lords, we all recognise that this is a very complex issue, as the noble Lord has said. And I'd like to pay tribute, if I may, to the efforts of my noble friend, Lady Cox, who's been on this case for years and years. Does the noble Lord not recognise that there are literally tens of thousands of women who are in a very disadvantaged position? The government produce one excuse after another. When will they actually take some effective action to end this outrageous situation?
There is a very real issue out there, and it has to do as much as anything else with education and information. And we have a situation in which many vulnerable people are not aware of what is required for a valid marriage ceremony in England and Wales. And therefore, we have to address that issue. I accept that. But simply to move in the direction of recognising, for example, the nikah form of ceremony creates very real difficulties in itself. And to take one example, how are you then going to police the issue of sham marriage?
My Lord, attended a number of meetings arranged by the noble Baroness, and who wishes to salute her courage and her persistence. Could I ask my noble friend on the front bench if he will try and inject a sense of urgency here? Because it's all very well saying, we will look at it, we have considered it, we will consider it. We need action. It's a complicated subject, but we need some real urgency here.
My Lords, following the Integrated Communities Government Action Plan, we are going to take forward an analysis of policy objectives in this area, and detailed work is going to be carried out.
Lord Robathan.
Question standing in my name on the order paper.
My Lords, we, the United Kingdom, have significant concerns about Nord Stream 2 pipeline, given its potential impact upon European energy security and in particular on Ukraine. We regularly raise our concerns with key partners, including Germany. Both my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, and the Minister for Europe have raised this with their German counterparts.
Well, I'm delighted my Lords, I'm delighted that the government takes this position. And last year, of course, we saw solidarity of Europe and the United States and the West in general following the Novichok poisonings in Salisbury. So nobody needs to be in any doubt as to the threats that do come from Russia. NATO was set up to face the threats coming from what was then the Soviet Union. Surely Her Majesty's government should use NATO as a lever to put pressure on Germany, which was after all being defended by NATO against the Soviet Union, to ensure that action is taken over Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which is described by many as an energy weapon, giving leverage to Putin.
First of all, as my noble friend may well be aware, Germany itself is still pursuing and moving forward with Nord Stream 2. The actual, in terms of the operational challenge at the moment, comes from Denmark, who haven't yet given approval for Nord Stream 2 to be near to where Nord Stream 1 is currently laid, and that process continues. And in that regard, we continue to work with Denmark as well. On his wider point around NATO, yes, of course, NATO was set up for the purposes of the defence of Europe, defence of the Western Alliance, and we continue to invest, and I'm delighted and proud of the commitment the United Kingdom makes, and we have asked other European partners, and yes, including Germany, to ensure they pay their dues to NATO.
My Lords, I welcome the response from the Noble Lord the Minister, but as the Prime Minister has said on many occasions, engage but beware. Now, in terms of raising this with the German government, just what has the response been in terms of how this matter is moved forward? Because we are maintaining sanctions. We have condemned Russia for its actions in the Crimea and Ukraine. So isn't it about time we heard from the Noble Lord the Minister? What response are we getting from our allies?
Well, first and foremost, this is an issue of European security, and in that regard, we have been working with the European Union. However, as I've already indicated from the dispatch box, Germany are certainly looking to proceed with Nord Stream 2, but there are caveats, and there has been work done. For example, the Noble Lord will be aware of the work done on the gas directive. So the whole issue is one of monopoly. Gazprom currently control a major source of European energy supplies. We believe that's incorrect. That's shared by European partners. And the work that's been done on the gas directive will guarantee that once the new pipeline is operational, that can be managed more effectively by European regulation.
Noble Lords are surely right to be concerned about the Nord Stream 2 pipeline and the greater reliance on Russia and Gazprom for this. The European Commission, and he's mentioned Denmark, are particularly seeking to mitigate the effect of this, including legislating so that the pipelines cannot be directly owned by gas suppliers. If indeed the UK leaves the EU, how in future might the UK be able to have any influence over decisions like this which affect the whole region?
Well, first of all, the Noble Lady is quite right to raise the issue of the work that's being done, and we've certainly played our part in strengthening the role of the gas directive and the issue of regulation for the very reason that there shouldn't be a monopolisation. And indeed, we've seen previous instances where the very supplier that is providing this has actually used, particularly in Ukraine, this on 3 separate occasions as a means to actually stop supply or certainly curtail supply. On her broader issue about what happens once we leave the European Union, I can assure her that we continue to have strong relationships with all our European Union partners, and that will continue after we leave the European Union.
I think my noble friend does fully understand that the real purposes behind Nord Stream 2 are, of course, for Russia to make life more uncomfortable for Ukraine, as you said, and also particularly for Poland, and of course to help cope with Germany's disastrous energy policy, which is resulting in rising carbon emissions rather than falling carbon emissions, and all the difficulties that follow from that. But in that case, are we being as helpful? Poland is our friend. Are we being as helpful to Poland in their particular situation, related both to energy and their relations with Russia, that we should be? We need their help, we need their support, and they need ours.
Well, first of all, I totally agree with my noble friend, and let me reassure him that we are doing just that. We are working with Poland. He's right, they have very genuine reservations on this particular project, as does Denmark. And we will continue to work with European partners in this respect. And the work that has been done on the gas directive does allow that greater level of regulation of supply. But as a broader issue, we are concerned. I mean, from a UK perspective, this doesn't impact our energy supply to the nature it does to Europe. The actual impact of the gas supplied through Russia is about 2%. As far as the UK is concerned in our overall energy mix. However, the concern is wider and for Europe, particularly for Ukraine, and we will continue to work with like-minded partners, Denmark and Poland included.
There was agreement in the last couple of years, both within NATO and within the EU, that we would cut reliance on Russian gas. how do the Germans justify to us in the debates we have the fact that actually they will increase their reliance on Russian gas? And as has been said by the noble lord, this is very much targeted towards Ukraine, for example. There are real issues here, and it is contrary to what has been agreed within NATO and the EU.
I agree with the noble lord, as I agree with my noble friend. It is quite clear from a UK's perspective the reason we are so against this particular project is for the very reasons the noble lord articulates.
Part of the problem is that former Chancellor Schroeder is one of the chief lobbyists for this project, and does the noble lord the Minister not see this in the context of the wishes of Putin's Russia to undermine the economy of Ukraine, just as we saw or see now in the Kerch Strait?
I agree with the noble lord. I mean, there is an impact here. If Nord Stream 2 went ahead, the current gas supplies which run through Ukraine, which actually, interestingly, in terms of supply, go to Slovakia, and then Slovakia then passes back to Ukraine because of the nature of the relationship between Russia and Ukraine, Ukraine would still lose out in the economy in terms of the transit fees that currently it receives about 3% of its GDP. So I agree with the sentiments being expressed, and the points that have been raised are consistent points we raised with the European Commission and European partners.